You are welcome back to data governance for business analytics students. We were discussing data governance frameworks made simple. So we will delve into it right now. Last week we looked at data security, data privacy that we had an earlier session where we were explaining these terminologies. But today we are going to delve into a case study, then look at the data governance frameworks that are available for firms and how firms can use them. We want to make sure that we try to explain about seven of the common ones and see how to apply them. But we're doing it in an interactive fashion. We are trying to I put this ebook together for the class that you can use. It's part of a bigger book I'm writing. So I'm going to give it to you after the class, and it's a very comprehensive 62-page document about data governance frameworks so that I can guide you and help navigate the pathway. And I also created a podcast on it discussing the governance frameworks in a very interactive fashion so that you can be able to learn. So we're going to be listening to the podcast whilst we go through the slides or go through the book itself. And then what we're going to do is that I'm going to be in the chat room discussing with you as we listen to um the discussions in the podcast. And I'll be highlighting on key issues. Dr. Bano is here with me, and we highlight on key issues, and we'll also be answering your questions in the chat room, so that we don't interrupt the discussion. Where necessary, if somebody raises their hand or types the question, we'll answer, and then where necessary, we may pause the podcast and then have a few questions, then continue. So take your pen and paper and then get ready for this. We have done it in the last two class. And then okay, Philip, I've seen your WhatsApp. You say you are transcribing this call with your tactic AI extension. Okay, but already we transcribed the call with the AI extension in Google and was in Zoom, and after that we shared with the class. So I don't know why you want to do this again. It's up to you. Okay. So whatever will happen is by the time we finish the class, we have gained quite a good understanding in this area. Thank you very much for coming today, and we hope you have a great time. Let me just share my audio. Okay, good, 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 good. Dr. Bano, is everything okay? Are we good to start?
Yes, Prof. We can.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a plunge into something really foundational for anyone working with data governance frameworks.
That's right.
We've got a stack of source material here, a really comprehensive look at what they are, why they matter, and how they play out in a very specific kind of high-stakes scenario involving an organization called Apex Health.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case. You know, data isn't just something we collect anymore. It's a huge asset, sometimes a liability, and definitely the fuel for decision-making. But just letting it run wild, that's, well, it's a recipe for disaster, especially in sensitive fields like healthcare.
Absolutely. So for you listening in, maybe you're a graduate student in business analytics, getting a handle on how to impose structure and control on data isn't just theory. It's about ensuring trust, managing risk, and unlocking real value ethically.
Could agree more. It's essential for real-world impact.
So our mission today is to take the source material and really unpack it. We'll start by getting clear on the basics. What is data governance? Why should it be on, frankly, everyone's radar?
Good starting point.
Then we'll build on that to understand what a data governance framework is, the blueprint, sort of, if you will, and the essential parts you'd typically find inside one.
And from there, we'll explore seven prominent frameworks that are outlined in the sources. These are influential models that have really shaped how organizations think about managing their data strategically.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. We'll then spend a good chunk of time on this Apex Health case study. This is a premier hospital in Ghana, serving a uniquely sensitive group of patients and operating under specific local regulations. We're going to see exactly how the principles and components of each of those seven frameworks could guide their data governance strategy in that, incredibly high-stakes environment.
It really puts the theory into practice. And finally, we'll pull out the most important lessons from this whole deep dive, maybe touch on some common pitfalls to watch out for that you can carry forward into your studies and future careers.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this. Diving right in, the source material starts, logically, by asking, what is data governance and why does it matter? And it defines it, at its core, as a system of decision rights and accountabilities for information-related processes.
Right. And it's maybe less like a rigid rule book and more like establishing the fundamental principles and the organizational structure for how data gets managed.
Okay.
It's the overall system ensuring data availability, usability, integrity, and security. Crucially, across the entire organization. It's not just an IT thing.
That's a key point, isn't it? It's not just the IT department's problem.
Not at all. It's about the people involved, the processes they follow, and the technology they use, but all working together.
So it's definitely more than just storing data securely or remembering to back it up.
Oh, much more. The sources really emphasize that data governance is about establishing clarity. Like, who is ultimately responsible for the accuracy of, say, patient medical history data? Who has the authority to decide who gets access to sensitive research data?
Yeah.
Governance defines the rules, those policies and procedures that dictate how data should be handled, from the moment it's created right through to when it's eventually deleted.
And a huge part of that handling, I imagine, is ensuring the quality and consistency, making sure the data is accurate, reliable, trustworthy.
Precisely. You just have to imagine the consequences of inaccurate medical data in a hospital like Apex Health. It could be truly catastrophic.
Yeah.
So governance puts processes in place to measure, monitor, and actively improve data quality. It's also vital for managing all the risks tied to data, protecting against breaches, ensuring you're compliant with complex regulations, and avoiding those really bad decisions based on flawed or unreliable information.
Which brings us back to maximizing data value. Good governance is what turns that raw data into a reliable asset you can actually use for insights and strategy.
Exactly. The source clarifies this really well by listing what data governance defines. It defines who holds the authority and control those decision rights we mentioned. It defines what policies and procedures govern how data is used, the standards, the rules. It specifies how data is managed, accessed, and used through its whole life cycle.
Right.
And critically, it articulates the why behind all these practices, linking everything back directly to the business objectives, the regulatory mandates like Ghana's Act 843, and the specific risk mitigation needs.
That why is the strategic connection, isn't it? It shows how managing data properly actually supports the bigger organizational picture. And the list of primary goals in the source really drives this home, ensuring data quality and consistency that directly enables better decision-making.
It's vital in any business, but acutely so in healthcare, where lives are literally on the line. Governance also ensures compliance with all those legal and regulatory obligations. The sources mention global ones like GDPR, HIMPA, CCPA. But as we'll see, understanding Ghana's Specific Data Protection Act, Act 843, is absolutely critical for Apex Health.
And then, of course, the other goals. Enhancing data security, reducing data-related risks, increasing the actual value you get from your data assets, improving operational efficiency because you have reliable data flowing, and fostering a more data-driven culture overall.
So in essence, data governance is the deliberate setup of structure and accountability for your data. It's the framework of rules, and processes that ensures data is a trusted, well-managed asset, not, a source of chaos or risk. It's a blend, people, processes, technology, and really involves everyone, not just the IT folks.
Okay, so if data governance is the what and the why, what exactly is a data governance framework? How does that fit in?
A good question. The data governance framework is the practical implementation plan. It's the operational structure, the how-to guide, if you like.
The blueprint.
Exactly. The blueprint an organization adopts to actually put those data governance principles, policies, and goals into practice. Think of it as the documented approach you follow to build and maintain your whole data governance program.
Got it. The tangible plan. And the source outlines several typical components you'd expect to find in one of these blueprints.
It does, laying out the essential building blocks. First, you absolutely need clearly defined roles and responsibilities, clarifying who's the data owner, who's the data steward, who's the data custodian for different types of data assets. Ambiguity here is a killer. Then you have policies and standards. These are the written rules covering things like data security classifications, acceptable use, quality expectations, privacy rules, data retention schedules, and so on.
Processes and procedures come next. That sounds like the day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. The step-by-step workflows for daily tasks. Like, how does someone actually request access to sensitive data? What's the documented procedure? Or what happens when a data quality issue gets flagged? Who does what? And all of this usually needs support from tools and technologies, specific software for managing metadata, maybe tools for automating data quality checks, systems for enforcing security controls. You also need metrics and controls to actually measure how effective your program is and ensure you're staying compliant.
And the last piece.
Crucially, robust communication and training. You have to make sure everyone understands the framework, the policies, why it matters, and what their individual responsibilities are. Without that buy-in, it just doesn't work.
Okay, let's maybe delve a bit deeper into those key components as the source lists them. It starts with vision, goals, and business alignment. That feels like the absolute starting point for any framework.
Absolutely. Before you build a house, you need the architectural plans, right? You need to know what you're building and why. This component is all about clearly defining the objectives of your data governance program. What specific problems are you trying to solve? What opportunities are you trying to enable with better data?
So linking it to the business strategy.
Precisely. It requires a solid business case, showing how governance supports the organization's overall strategic goals. And it means defining the scope, what data, what systems, what processes are actually going to be included in this governance effort, at least initially.
Then comes roles and responsibilities, the crucial human element.
Foundational, absolutely foundational. The source details key roles, like the Data Governance Council or board. This is typically a senior-level group providing strategic oversight, making high-level decisions, and resolving major conflicts.
And then the data owners.
Right. Data owners are usually business leaders or senior subject matter experts. They are ultimately accountable for the quality, security, and appropriate usage of specific data domains. Think of them as representing the business perspective of that data.
Accountable, okay. And the data stewards, they work with the owners.
Yes, closely. Data stewards are more the operational, hands-on data managers within specific business units or domains. They are responsible for the day-to-day tasks. Defining data elements, maybe implementing data quality rules defined by the owner, managing metadata for their area, ensuring policies are actually followed in practice. They're often the real experts on the data itself and how it's used operationally.
So owner is strategic accountability. Steward is tactical responsibility for a domain. Is that a fair way to think about it?
That's a very good way to look at it, yeah. Then you have data custodians. These folks are typically IT professionals.
Okay.
They're responsible for the technical environment where the data resides without. The databases, the servers, implementing security controls, managing backup processes. They implement the policies and standards set by the owners and stewards, but they don't usually make decisions about the business meaning or the appropriate use of the data.
Right. They manage the infrastructure that holds the data. And often there's someone coordinating all this, like a chief data officer.
Exactly. A CDO or a dedicated data governance lead often acts as the program champion, driving it forward. And then finally, you have the data users, which is basically everyone else in the organization who interacts with data in some way. Their responsibility to understand and follow the established policies and procedures. Without that broad adherence, the framework is just, well, paper.
Makes sense. Next component, policies and standards, the documented rules of the road.
Right. This is where you translate those strategic goals and vision into actionable rules. It starts often with high-level data principles, guiding beliefs like data is a shared organizational asset, or data privacy is paramount.
Like a constitution for data.
Kinda, yeah. Then come the formal data policies. These are detailed written rules covering specific areas like data quality thresholds, security classifications and handling procedures, privacy protection measures, data retention periods based on legal requirements, and acceptable data usage guidelines.
And standards.
Data standards define specifics needed for consistency. Things like naming conventions for data fields, required formats for dates or codes, or standard values to be used in certain fields. And a really vital element here is the business glossary or data dictionary.
Ah, defining terms.
Yes, a central repository that provides clear, agreed-upon definitions for key business terms and technical data elements. This ensures everyone is speaking the same language about the data, which is surprisingly often not the case initially.
I can imagine. Okay, processes and procedures. This covers the operational execution, the how-to.
Exactly. This is the step-by-step detail. It includes data quality management processes, the procedures for how you actually profile data to find issues, assess its quality against your defined standards, cleanse or correct inaccurate data, and continuously monitor that quality over time.
Right.
It covers data access request and approval processes, a defined workflow for users to request access to specific data sets, and how those requests are reviewed and approved based on roles, policies, and the principle of least privilege.
Least privilege only giving access that's strictly needed.
Precisely. Then there are issue resolution processes. How are data problems, quality, security, access issues, reported, investigated, tracked, and ultimately resolved?
Change management processes ensure that any changes to data policies, standards, or the systems handling sensitive data are managed carefully to avoid unintended consequences. And compliance monitoring and reporting processes establish how you actually check and report on adherence to policies and regulations.
Data domains and data lifecycle management, what does that cover?
Organizing data into logical groups or domains like patient data, financial data, employee data is really key. It helps in assigning ownership clearly and applying specific governance rules effectively to the right data. Data lifecycle management is about managing data from the moment it's created or acquired through its active use phase, then into archival, and finally its secure destruction or deletion, making sure the right policies are followed at each and every stage.
Okay. And technology and tools are the practical enablers for all this. Right. While governance isn't just about tech, tools are pretty essential to support the framework effectively at scale. This could include dedicated data governance software platforms that help manage metadata, policy workflows, and issue tracking. Data quality tools for profiling, assessment, and cleansing tasks. Metadata management tools to build and maintain that crucial data catalog and business glossary. And of course, data security tools for implementing access controls, encryption, monitoring, and things like data loss prevention.
Data quality management gets its own dedicated component again here, really underscoring its importance.
It's that crucial, especially in contexts like healthcare. This goes deeper than just the processes. It covers defining specific data quality dimensions. What does good data actually mean for us? Thinking about accuracy, completeness, timeliness, consistency, uniqueness, validity.
Got it.
It includes the ongoing activities of data profiling, analyzing the data to understand its structure, patterns, and potential issues. Data assessment, measuring the data's quality against those defined dimensions and standards. Data cleansing and improvement, the actual work of fixing identified errors or inconsistencies. And continuous monitoring and reporting using specific data quality metrics to track progress and spot emerging problems.
Data security and compliance is obviously vital, maybe especially in sensitive domains like Apex Health.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
This covers data classification, systematically categorizing data based on its sensitivity level or regulatory requirements, like classifying VVIP data as highly restricted. Implementing fine-grained access controls to ensure only authorized individuals or systems can access specific data based on their role and context, ensuring regulatory compliance with all relevant laws and standards like Ghana's Act 843, and importantly, having a robust, well-rehearsed data breach incident response plan ready for when, inevitably, something goes wrong.
Metadata management and data catalog, you mentioned this, the info about the data.
Yes, data about the data. Its business definition, its technical format, its origin or lineage, its relationships to other data, its security classification, its usage restrictions, who the owner and steward are. A data catalog acts like a searchable inventory or library card catalog for the organization's data assets, allowing users to discover what data is available and understand its context through its metadata. It's foundational for really understanding your data landscape and applying governance effectively.
And metrics and monitoring, measuring success and spotting problems.
You need to know if your governance program is actually working and achieving its goals. This means setting up KPIs, key performance indicators, to track the performance of the DG program itself. Your percentage of critical data assets cataloged, improvements in data quality scores, and KRIs, key risk indicators to flag potential problems or rising risks. For example, number of unauthorized access attempts blocked, increase in data quality exceptions. Regular audits and assessments are also part of this, independently checking for adherence to policies and regulatory requirements.
And finally, communication and training, getting everyone on board and keeping them there.
You could design the most theoretically perfect framework, but if people don't know it exists, don't understand their role in it, or don't grasp the why behind it, it's guaranteed to fail. This involves having a strategic communication plan to keep all stakeholders informed. Ongoing training and awareness programs for all staff, often tailored to their specific roles and data interactions. And effective change management strategies to help the organization adapt to new ways of working with data, which can sometimes be a significant cultural shift.
Wow, okay. That's a really comprehensive set of components. It's clear a lot goes into actually building one of these frameworks. Now, the source points out that while organizations usually tailor their approach, several influential models exist that provide a strong foundation or specific kinds of guidance. Let's briefly look at the top 7 leading frameworks it highlights.
Yeah, these frameworks represent different, sometimes overlapping, philosophies and focus areas within data governance and the broader field of data management. Understanding them gives you a good range of perspectives and tools to draw from.
First up, DAMA DMBOK, the Data Management Body of Knowledge.
Right. Developed by DAMA International, this is arguably the most comprehensive guide out there for the entire field of data management. It positions data governance as the central coordinating function that integrates all the other data management knowledge areas, things like data quality, security, architecture, metadata, modeling, etc.
So it's very holistic.
Very holistic. Its strength is providing this widely accepted foundational reference model that covers all the different dimensions of managing data effectively. It's maybe less of a strict step-by-step implementation framework and more of a comprehensive body of knowledge to structure your thinking and ensure you cover all the bases.
Okay. Then there's the Data Governance Institute DGI framework associated with Gwen Thomas and DGI.
This one is often highlighted for being very practical and focused on actually operationalizing data governance. It presents 10 universal components it argues are necessary for a successful program, really emphasizing clear decision rights, well-defined roles, and repeatable processes.
More hands-on.
Yeah, its strength lies in its straightforward, mission-driven approach. It's often seen as quite accessible and actionable, particularly helpful for organizations that are maybe just getting started with formal governance or looking to bring structure to existing, perhaps inconsistent practices.
Next, COBIT 2019 from ISACA. This sounds more IT-focused.
COBIT is indeed a broader framework designed for enterprise IT governance and management overall. While it's not exclusively about data, it includes strong processes and objectives specifically related to information and data management, like a key objective called APO 14, Managed Data. Its real strength is its focus on aligning IT objectives with overarching business goals, managing IT-related risks effectively, and ensuring compliance. This makes it highly relevant for organizations, especially those with mature IT departments and significant regulatory pressures, as it provides a structured way to integrate data governance into the wider corporate and IT governance landscape.
Makes sense. Then we have the CMMI Institute's Data Management Maturity, DMM model. Maturity model sounds like assessment.
Exactly. The DMM is primarily focused on assessment and continuous improvement. It provides a model to evaluate an organization's current data management capabilities across a range of process areas, including data governance, data quality, architecture, and others.
And it ranks them.
Yes. It plots the organization's capabilities against 5 distinct maturity levels, from initial ad hoc practices up to optimized, continuously improving processes. Its strength is providing a benchmark and a structured evolutionary roadmap for organizations that are committed to systematically improving their data management capabilities over time. It helps you see where you are and plan how to get better.
Okay. ISO IE 38500 series, specifically ISO IET 385051 for data governance. ISO usually means standards.
Right. This is a high-level, principles-based international standard. What's interesting is that it's aimed specifically at the governing body of an organization. Think the board of directors or the most senior executive management team.
So top-down guidance.
Very much top-down. It provides 6 core principles for the effective governance of IT, and specifically data. It really emphasizes the governing body's direct responsibility to evaluate, direct, and monitor the organization's data management practices. Its strength is ensuring that data governance is driven from the very top, aligned with the organization's overall strategy and risk appetite, and focused squarely on responsible ethical management.
Interesting focus. Next is CDMC, the Cloud Data Management Capabilities Framework from the EDM Council. Does this only apply to the cloud?
Well, it was developed initially with financial services managing data in complex cloud and hybrid environments in mind, focusing heavily on meeting stringent regulatory requirements. It defines 14 key capabilities related to things like data classification, access controls, encryption, data lineage discovery, very granular controls.
So very control-oriented.
Extremely. Its strength is providing this detailed, control-focused approach, emphasizing automated and auditable capabilities for managing data risks, particularly in modern complex data landscapes. And while cloud is in the name, many of its principles and control frameworks are highly valuable and applicable for organizations aiming for rigorous governance even in purely on-premise environments. It's about the discipline.
Good point. And finally, TOGAFE, the Open Group Architecture Framework. This sounds architectural.
It is. TOGAF is a comprehensive framework for enterprise architecture, defining how an organization's business functions, applications, data, and technology infrastructure all fit together coherently. Data governance isn't a separate module. It's woven directly into TOGIAF's core process, the Architecture Development Method, ADM.
So it integrates DG into the bigger picture.
Precisely. It ensures that the data architecture itself is defined, designed, and governed as an integral part of the overall enterprise blueprint. Its strength is its focus on aligning data strategy and governance tightly with the broader business and IT architecture, ensuring a cohesive, strategically aligned, and integrated approach rather than treating data governance in isolation.
Okay, so that's 7 distinct frameworks, each with a slightly different lens or focus, but all fundamentally aiming to bring order, control, and value to an organization's data assets. And the source makes the point that these aren't mutually exclusive, right? Organizations often mix and match.
Exactly right. You rarely see an organization adopt one framework wholesale, ignoring all others. More often, they'll draw principles or specific components from several frameworks to build their own tailored approach that best fits their unique needs, their industry, their size, their company culture, their specific regulatory environment, and the nature of the data they handle.
The best framework is the one that fits.
Precisely.
Which brings us very neatly to the case application section, guiding data governance at Apex Health. This is where we really get to see these concepts come alive in a, frankly, very challenging real-world context.
Yeah, Apex Health, as described in the source, is a premier hospital in Ghana. What makes its situation so unique and incredibly high stakes from a data governance perspective is its specific clientele. We're talking about political leaders, members of the judiciary, parliamentarians, potentially even the presidency itself.
Wow.
Okay, so the data they handle isn't just standard protected health information, PHI, which is sensitive enough. It potentially carries implications for national security, political stability, and the highest levels of public trust. And on top of that, they operate under the specific legal requirements of Ghana's Data Protection Act, 2012 Act 843.
So for Apex Health, things like security, confidentiality, data integrity, and compliance aren't just important goals. They are absolute non-negotiable requirements. There's zero room for error. Okay, so let's walk through how each of the 7 frameworks we just discussed could specifically guide the development and implementation of data governance within this incredibly sensitive environment, drawing on the detailed analysis provided in the source material.
Sounds good. Let's start with DAMA DMBOK2. Given its strength in providing that holistic, comprehensive view of all data management functions.
Right, the big picture one.
Exactly. Its overarching philosophy for Apex Health would be to establish a thoroughly integrated, centrally governed data ecosystem. The goal: to ensure every single activity involving data from, say, recording a routine vital sign to archiving highly sensitive presidential medical records is handled with the absolute highest standards of security, precision, ethics, and complete compliance with Act 843. And this has to happen while explicitly acknowledging and mitigating the unique risks associated with their high-profile clientele. Data governance acts as the central coordinating hub for everything data-related.
And how would that holistic approach translate into specific actions or structures for Apex Health? What would it look like on the ground?
Well, the vision and mission would be framed very deliberately, something like, to be the global gold standard in secure and ethical health data management for sensitive individuals, ensuring absolute patient confidentiality, unwavering data integrity, and full compliance with Ghana's Act 843.
Ambitious, but necessary given the context.
Absolutely. And the goals and objectives would need to be highly specific and measurable. For instance, achieve 100% verifiable compliance with Act 843 for all patient data. Implement access control so granular that you can ensure, say, 99.999% certainty that only personnel with a literal documented need to know can access sensitive VVIP data. Establish clear, transparent accountability for data assets. Develop and rigorously test specific data handling protocols just for VVIPs. And foster a hospital-wide culture where data responsibility isn't just a policy, it's ingrained behavior.
The governance structure itself would need to be incredibly robust, I assume.
Essential. Establishing a high-level data governance office or council isn't just recommended, it's mandatory in this scenario. Its composition would need senior representation, heads of major clinical services like cardiology, or maybe a specific head of the presidential medical wing, alongside senior figures from IT, legal, security, and possibly even an external ethics advisor specializing in sensitive data governance.
And their mandate.
Strategic direction, formal approval of all data policies, securing necessary resources, resolving complex data-related issues with clear, expedited paths for anything involving VVIP data, monitoring the effectiveness of the entire program, and critically, operating with the utmost discretion and confidentiality themselves.
Defining the roles owner, steward, custodian becomes even more critical here, doesn't it? No room for ambiguity.
None whatsoever. DMBOK's focus on clear roles would mean explicitly defining data owners. For example, the head of a clinical department is accountable for the data generated within their service. But for VVIP data, you might need a specifically designated data owner, like the head of the presidential medical wing, who is personally accountable for the integrity and confidentiality of that specific patient cohort's records.
Okay.
Data stewards, perhaps a senior registrar or a dedicated nurse manager in the VIP wing, would be responsible for the day-to-day data quality, metadata documentation, and policy adherence for those sensitive records, working under the direction of the owner. IT managers would serve as data custodians, responsible for the secure operation of the technical systems storing the data. And every single data user, from administrators to clinicians to support staff, must understand their specific heightened responsibilities and the severe consequences of error or negligence, especially when dealing with VVIP data.
Policy development would require just extreme attention to detail.
Unquestionably. The policies developed under a DMBOK framework here would focus intensely on extreme confidentiality and privacy, clearly outlining the severe consequences for any breach. The data security policy would mandate a battery of robust technical and physical safeguards, things like strong encryption for data both at rest, in databases, backups, and in transit across networks. Granular role-based access control, RBAC, ensuring access is strictly limited by job function and context, and mandatory comprehensive immutable audit logging of every single access attempt, view, or modification of sensitive records.
What about access itself?
The access control policy would detail extremely stringent procedures. It might require layered approvals for accessing VVIP data, even for routine care, and includes special, highly restricted protocols for emergency break glass access to critical patient information for leaders, ensuring it's logged and reviewed immediately. Policies covering data quality would set incredibly high standards. Data retention and disposal policies must comply rigorously with Ghana's Act 843 mandates. Remote access policies would be highly restrictive, if allowed at all, for sensitive data, and the use of personal devices in areas handling VVIP data would likely be strictly prohibited.
And incident response.
A data breach incident response plan wouldn't just exist on paper. It would be incredibly detailed, regularly tested through realistic simulations, and include specific, pre-approved, carefully controlled protocols for handling breaches involving VVIP data. This includes sensitive notification procedures that have to consider potential national security implications, not just individual privacy.
The underlying data architecture would also need to be designed with security as the absolute top priority, based on DMBOK principles.
Yes. DMBOK's architectural guidance would lead to designing a highly secure and resilient data landscape. This would likely involve network segmentation to isolate the most sensitive data, perhaps in dedicated hardened network enclaves. The architecture itself must inherently support comprehensive, tamper-proof audit trails. Secure integration between different clinical systems, EHRs, LIS, PASS, etc., is vital, using secure authenticated data exchange protocols, maybe using standards like HL7 FHIR, but layering on additional security like mutual TLS authentication and end-to-end encryption. And the architecture must be designed for high availability and robust disaster recovery, while also applying data minimization principles wherever feasible. Only collect and retain the data that is absolutely necessary for the stated purpose.
Data modeling would need to handle sensitivity at a very granular level, too.
Precisely. This means developing detailed data models that explicitly identify sensitive attributes within records. For any potential secondary use of data, like research or operational analytics, which would be extremely restricted for VVIPs, rigorous anonymization or pseudonymization strategies are absolutely essential, given the incredibly high risk of re-identification. This might require sophisticated techniques beyond standard masking, carefully evaluated for residual risk. Ensuring consistency of data definitions and formats across different systems is also a key modeling concern addressed by DMBOK.
Data storage and operations sounds like it demands extreme physical and logical care.
It does. The framework guides focusing on secure, likely on-premise data centers with stringent physical access controls, biometrics guards, logging. Robust, regularly tested, encrypted backup processes are vital, with secure off-site storage options that carefully consider data sovereignty requirements under Act 843, keeping sensitive data physically within Ghana's borders where legally required or strategically necessary. Strict change management controls must govern any modifications to systems or infrastructure handling VVIP data, alongside continuous performance and security monitoring and immutable logging of all critical system operations.
The data security implementation itself needs to be multi-layered.
It absolutely has to be. DMBOK guides a defense-in-depth approach, securing the network perimeter, internal network segments, individual endpoints, computers, medical devices, the applications themselves, and finally the data itself through encryption and access controls. This involves strong authentication methods like multi-factor authentication, MFA, for all users accessing patient data, and even more robust privileged access management, PM solutions, for IT administrators who have elevated system access. Regular independent security audits, vulnerability assessments, and penetration testing by highly vetted and trusted third parties are non-negotiable. Continuous monitoring for suspicious activity, using SIM tools, for instance, and mandatory recurring staff training on security best practices, including being acutely aware of sophisticated phishing and social engineering attempts, specifically targeting personnel who might have access to sensitive VVIP data, are absolutely crucial components.
Data integration between systems must also be secure and tightly controlled.
Absolutely. Integrating systems like the EHR with the Lab Information System, LIS, the Picture Archiving and Communication System, KCS, or any specialized VVIP care monitoring tools must use secure protocols with strong mutual authentication. Maintaining data integrity in the security context during transfers is paramount. Adherence to strict need-to-know access controls must be enforced even at the integration layer, ensuring one system can only access the specific data it's authorized for in another system.
What about unstructured data, like notes or scans?
Good point. DMBOK doesn't just focus on structured database records. It guides governing unstructured data too, things like scanned documents, doctors' clinical notes, emails containing patient information. This requires implementing secure enterprise content management, ECM, or document management systems, DMS, with features like version control, strict access controls tied to user roles, comprehensive audit trails for document access, and retention policies aligned with those for structured data. Secure scanning procedures and handling protocols for physical documents are also vital.
Reference and master data management, this sounds key for accurately identifying patients, especially VVIPs.
Critically important. Implementing master data management, MDM, for key entities like patients is paramount. Ensuring a single, unique, accurate master patient index, MPI, is vital for safe clinical care, but for VVIPs, it also requires exceptionally rigorous verification processes during registration and ongoing management of identity data with extreme confidentiality. MDM also covers ensuring consistency for other key reference data, like lists of practitioners providers, standardized clinical codes, ICD, LOINC, SNOMED CT, and defined hospital services, all needing clear ownership and stewardship under the DMBOK model.
Data warehousing and business intelligence seems like a particularly high-risk area when dealing with VVIP data. Aggregating it could be dangerous.
It absolutely is. Access controls to any data warehouse or BI environment containing patient data must be extremely stringent. For VVIP data, even if aggregated for operational reporting, research use would be incredibly rare and highly scrutinized. Anonymization or pseudonymization techniques must be applied rigorously to mitigate the high risk of re-identification through inference or linkage attacks. This might involve techniques even more sophisticated than standard methods, like differential privacy. Reports themselves must be carefully reviewed for potential disclosure risks before distribution. Role-based access should control who can even see specific reports, and all queries accessing the underlying data must be logged and audited.
Metadata management feels indispensable for understanding and controlling all the sensitive data across different systems.
Totally indispensable. DMBOK guides establishing a comprehensive metadata repository or data catalog. For Apex Health, this must include not just standard business definitions and technical details, but also operational metadata, like data lineage tracking, and crucially, detailed security and sensitivity classifications, perhaps with specific tags or flags explicitly marking data elements related to VVIPs. This metadata is absolutely vital for understanding what data you have, where it resides, how sensitive it is, how it flows through systems, and how it must be controlled and protected according to defined policies. You can't govern what you don't understand.
And data quality isn't just important, it's potentially life or death in this clinical context.
Exactly right. A proactive, continuous data quality program, guided by DMBOK principles, is non-negotiable. This involves defining clear data quality dimensions, accuracy, completeness, timeliness, consistency, uniqueness, validity, and setting exceptionally high-quality targets, essentially striving for zero errors in critical VVIP data fields like allergies, current medications, or primary diagnoses. Regular data profiling, quality assessment, cleansing processes, continuous monitoring, and transparent reporting are standard components. However, the processes for correcting data, especially in VVIP records, must themselves be highly controlled, auditable, and ensure absolute accuracy. The consequences of data quality failures for VVIPs could be severe, so the focus and rigor must be intense.
And finally, DEMA-DMBO explicitly includes data handling ethics. How does that play out here?
For Apex Health, this is paramount. It means developing a specific code of conduct that explicitly emphasizes the profound ethical obligations arising from their unique clientele, the absolute duty of confidentiality and trust. Mandatory regular ethics training for all staff is required, likely with specialized intensive modules focused specifically on the VVIP context, the ethical handling of highly sensitive personal information, and the potential personal, professional, and even national repercussions of ethical lapses or breaches. Establishing an ethics subcommittee, perhaps as part of the main Data Governance Council, could provide a forum for reviewing particularly sensitive cases or policy interpretations related to ethical dilemmas.
Wow. Okay, that's an incredibly detailed breakdown of how DEMA-DMBO's comprehensive, holistic view would apply. Its strength for Apex Health is clearly ensuring that all the interconnected pieces of data management are governed cohesively.
It provides that essential integrated landscape view. It ensures you're thinking about everything.
Now, let's shift gears and look at the Data Governance Institute, DGI, framework. The source suggests its philosophy for Apex Health would be about establishing unambiguous rules, clearly defined roles, and strict accountability, making governance truly operational and integrated into daily routines, especially concerning VVIP data.
That's right. DGI is known for its very practical, actionable approach. So applying its 10 universal components to Apex Health. First, the mission and vision would be laser-focused and crystal clear. Something like, to ensure all patient data, particularly that of VVIPs, is managed with the absolute highest standards of integrity, security, confidentiality, and ethics in full compliance with Act 843, aspiring to be a world leader in sensitive data governance. No ambiguity.
Goals and objectives would need to be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, as you mentioned. Examples.
Exactly. Think concrete targets like complete formal review and approval of the VVIP data access policy within 3 months, or achieve 100% implementation of granular role-based access control RBAC across all systems containing VVIP data by end of fiscal year, or ensure 95% of staff handling VVIP data complete specialized security and ethics training module by Q3. Plus ongoing goals like maintain 0 preventable security breaches involving sensitive patient data, or demonstrate fully auditable VVIP data access patterns meeting policy requirements in 100% of audits.
Data governance controls, which DGI emphasizes as metrics, would be vital for tracking progress.
Absolutely. KPIs would track things like the percentage of critical data elements that have defined quality rules and are actively monitored, the number of security incidents related to sensitive data with a target of 0, internal and external audit scores related to data governance, the average time taken to resolve critical data quality issues, and maybe staff awareness scores from training assessments. KRI's key risk indicators would focus on potential warning signs, like the number of detected unauthorized access attempts on VVIP systems, the number of instances of incomplete VVIP consent documentation found during audits, or maybe the time lag between data entry and detection of a data quality anomaly in a critical VVIP record field. Regular structured reporting of these metrics to the Data Governance Council is essential for oversight.
Decision rights are a real cornerstone of DGI's practical, operational approach. How would that work at Apex?
It's crucial for clarity, especially under pressure. Defining exactly who has the authority to make specific data-related decisions is paramount. Using a RACI matrix outlining who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for key decisions is standard DGI practice. The source provides a powerful example for Apex, authorizing emergency break glass access to a president's medical record.
Okay, who does what there?
The accountable party might be the chief medical officer or the designated head of the VVIP unit. The responsible party could be a senior IT security manager who technically performs the action following strict protocols. Consulted parties might need to include presidential security liaisons or the hospital's legal counsel, depending on the situation. And the informed parties would certainly include the CEO and the head of the Data Governance Office, likely immediately after the event. Having these predefined rights for critical scenarios, as well as for routine things like classifying new data elements by sensitivity, especially assigning VVIP tiers, approving rare policy exceptions, which would be heavily scrutinized for VVIP data, handling external data sharing requests extremely limited and tightly controlled for VVIPs, and defining specific data quality rules is absolutely necessary to avoid confusion and ensure accountability.
And that accountability and responsibilities component needs to be explicitly linked and understood by everyone.
DGI really emphasizes this linkage. Data owners, like the head of the Presidential Medical Wing, are clearly accountable for their data domain's overall security, quality, and compliant use. They approve access standards and define business rules. Data stewards, like that VIP wing nurse manager, are responsible for the operational day-to-day data management activities, implementing quality checks, managing metadata, ensuring policies are followed on the floor. The Data Governance Office, DGO, is responsible for coordinating the overall program, policy management, training, monitoring, but ultimately accountable for the program's effectiveness to senior leadership. And crucially, all staff are held responsible for adhering to policies, reporting issues, and maintaining confidentiality. The framework would also explicitly state the severe consequences, potentially including termination and legal action, for breaches involving sensitive data, particularly VVIP information, to underscore the seriousness.
Stakeholders need to be managed very carefully and discreetly in this sensitive environment.
Absolutely. Beyond the obvious internal stakeholders, hospital leadership, department heads, IT, security, legal, compliance, frontline staff, Apex Health has unique and highly sensitive external stakeholders. These include the patients themselves, the VVIPs and their designated representatives, government regulatory bodies like Ghana's Data Protection Commission, responsible for enforcing Act 843, and potentially even national security agencies or liaisons. A very discreet, carefully planned, and meticulously executed stakeholder communication and engagement plan is absolutely crucial for managing expectations, ensuring appropriate transparency, which would be very limited externally, and maintaining trust.
The Data Governance Office, DGO structure itself, needs to support this framework effectively.
Yes. DGI recommends a formal DGO. Having a CDO or a dedicated data governance lead who reports directly to senior leadership provides the necessary visibility and authority. The DGO's functions would include facilitating the Data Governance Council meetings, managing the entire lifecycle of data policies and standards, drafting, review, approval, communication updates, overseeing the data stewardship program across the hospital, coordinating data quality initiatives and monitoring, planning, and delivering data governance training, monitoring overall compliance, acting as a central point of contact for data governance inquiries or issues, managing the selection and implementation of DG tools, and critically, coordinating the hospital's response to data incidents in collaboration with security and legal.
And DGI envisions data governance councils and potentially other bodies.
Often a layered structure, yes. A main high-level Apex Health Data Governance Council, HDGC, likely chaired by the CEO or another very senior executive, would provide strategic direction, approve major policies and resource allocations, resolve escalated issues that couldn't be handled at lower levels, and act as visible champions for data governance. Below that, you might have data stewardship working groups, perhaps organized by major data domains like clinical records, financials, etc. These groups, composed primarily of data stewards from those areas, would tackle day-to-day operational issues, define specific data elements and quality rules for their domain, make recommendations for policy updates based on practical experience, and ensure coordination at the operational level.
And for the VVIP aspect.
Given Apex Health's unique context, a highly specialized and restricted VVIP data governance subcommittee would almost certainly be essential, as highlighted in the source. This committee would likely have very limited membership, operate under enhanced security protocols and stringent non-disclosure agreements, and focus solely on the unique requirements, risks, policies, and oversight related to VVIP data handling, potentially reporting directly to the main counsel or even the CEO.
Makes sense. And the actual data governance processes themselves, the operational procedures DGI defines.
These are the engines that make governance run day to day. DGI emphasizes formalizing these rigorous policy management processes, ensuring policies are documented using standard templates, formally reviewed and approved, effectively communicated to all relevant staff, regularly reviewed, and updated as needed. A tiered issue resolution process, providing clear steps for reporting data issues, quality, access, security, tracking them, escalating them based on severity with a clear fast track for high-priority issues, especially those involving VVIP data, and ensuring they're resolved and documented. A formal data access request process, using standardized forms or tools requiring clear justification, routing requests through defined multi-level approval workflows, potentially involving data owner, manager, and security for sensitive data, ensuring approvals are documented, access is provisioned according to least privilege, and access is reviewed periodically. Continuous compliance monitoring processes, including regular internal audits of data handling practices, generating reports for management and the DG Council, and preparing documentation required by external regulators like the Act 843 Commission. Data quality management processes, defining how quality is measured, monitored, and how remediation efforts are prioritized and executed. Metadata management processes, ensuring the data catalog and business glossary are kept up to date. And, as mentioned before, a well-defined, regularly practiced data breach incident response process with specific pre-approved steps, roles, responsibilities, and carefully controlled communication protocols tailored for potential VVIP data breaches.
And finally, DGI talks about proactive, reactive, and ongoing DG processes. How does that cycle work?
DGI sees governance not just as setting rules, but as a continuous cycle of activity. Proactive elements are about prevention and planning, embedding data standards into new system implementations from the start, conducting mandatory data privacy impact assessments, DPIAs, as required by Act 843, before processing VVIP data in new ways or using new technologies, performing regular risk assessments to identify potential vulnerabilities before they are exploited, and providing foundational training to build awareness. Reactive processes focus on responding efficiently and effectively when things go wrong, having streamlined issue resolution pathways, ensuring timely and effective incident response, and implementing corrective actions to prevent recurrence. Ongoing processes are the continuous maintenance activities. Compliance monitoring, regular policy reviews and updates based on changing regulations or risks, continuous improvement initiatives for the DG program based on metrics and feedback, and regular meetings of the governance bodies, council, working groups, VVIP subcommittee to keep things moving.
So DGI's strength for Apex Health seems to be its very practical, actionable nature. The clear delineation of rules, decision rights, accountabilities, and formalized processes seems absolutely vital for managing that level of sensitive data responsibly.
Exactly. It provides the clear operational engine needed to make governance a reality in the day-to-day work of the hospital.
Okay, let's move on to COBIT 2019. Now, this framework, as you said, brings a strong focus on broader IT governance, risk management, achieving control objectives, and ensuring alignment with business goals. How would its philosophy apply specifically to Apex Health's unique situation?
COBIT's philosophy for Apex Health would be centered on establishing a comprehensive, highly auditable, and business-aligned system of controls specifically designed for managing sensitive health data, particularly VVIP data. The goal is to ensure rigorous, demonstrable compliance with Act 843 and to manage the extreme data-related risks effectively and transparently. It provides a structured way to show regulators and stakeholders that due diligence is being performed systematically.
And how would COBIT's specific governance and management objectives guide this process at Apex Health? It has distinct sets, right?
Yes, COBIT distinguishes between governance objectives, typically the responsibility of the governing body, like the board, and management objectives, responsibility of executive management. Under governance objectives, EDM 01, Ensured Governance Framework Setting and Maintenance, is directly relevant. This involves the board ensuring the DG framework itself is established, maintained, effective, and that roles, like specific VVIP data owners and decision-making structures, are clearly defined, all aligned with Act 843 and stakeholder expectations, which for Apex include national interest.
Okay.
EDM 02, Ensured Benefits Delivery, means the board ensures the significant investment required for robust DG actually delivers tangible value, things like improved VVIP data security, enhanced patient and public trust, guaranteed compliance posture, and ultimately supporting high-quality, safe clinical outcomes.
EDM 03, Ensured Risk Optimization, sounds incredibly relevant here, maybe the most relevant. It's absolutely paramount for Apex Health. This objective requires the board to ensure that data-related risks are identified, assessed, and managed down to an acceptable level. For Apex, this means defining an extremely low tolerance for risks involving VVIP data breaches. It involves overseeing the implementation of controls to mitigate these risks and ensuring robust contingency plans are in place and tested.
EDM 04, Ensured Resource Optimization, means the board ensures that adequate resources, skilled personnel, properly vetted and trained, appropriate technology, like advanced security monitoring tools, and sufficient budget are allocated and used effectively for the DG program, with a particular focus on protecting the most sensitive data assets. And EDM-05, ensured stakeholder engagement, requires the board to oversee engagement with all key internal and external stakeholders, hospital leadership, staff, patients, especially VVIPs, handled with appropriate discretion and privacy, and crucially, regulators like Ghana's Data Protection Commission and relevant government bodies concerned with national security. The goal is to understand their needs and expectations regarding data handling and ensure appropriate transparency where feasible and permitted.
Okay, those are the board-level governance objectives.
Yeah.
What about the management objectives that COBIT defines for execution?
There are several highly relevant ones. APO1 Managed INT Management Framework is about implementing the specific data governance processes as an integral part of the hospital's overall IT and information management structure. APO7 Managed Human Resources focuses specifically on the people aspect for sensitive data, ensuring rigorous vetting procedures, specialized training programs, and ongoing competency assessments for all personnel who handle VVIP data, covering privacy obligations, security protocols, and ethical conduct under pressure.
What about external parties?
That falls under APOA8, Managed Relationships. This objective guides ensuring that any third-party vendors or partners who might have access to hospital systems or data, like EMR vendors, IT support contractors, or even specialized consultants, adhere to the most stringent data protection standards, with contracts explicitly reflecting Act 843 requirements and the heightened sensitivity of VVIP data.
Security is obviously key.
Yes, APO13, Managed Security, links closely to a detailed objective in the Deliver Service and Support domain, DSS005, Managed Security Services. Together, they cover defining, operating, and monitoring the hospital's comprehensive information security system, including implementing specific, heightened technical and procedural measures for VVIP data protection, covering prevention, detection, and rapid response to threats.
And APO14 managed data, you mentioned this was new in COBIT 2019.
Yes, and it's highly applicable here. It focuses explicitly on the effective management of data assets throughout their entire life cycle. This includes defining data roles, owners, stewards, ensuring processes for data quality, security classification, tracking data lineage, and managing data retention and disposal are in place for all data, but with an enhanced focus and rigor applied to VVIP data, given its criticality.
What about bringing in new systems or changing existing ones?
COBIT covers that in the Build, Acquire, and Implement BAI domain. BAI 02, Managed Requirements Definition, is crucial. It ensures that data governance requirements, security needs, privacy controls, specific Act 843 compliance points are identified and incorporated right from the very beginning when acquiring or developing any new IT system or application. This embodies the privacy and security by design principle. BAI 03, Managed Solutions Identification and Build, then ensures that when these new solutions are designed and implemented, they include the necessary built-in controls, audit trails, data management features, and security capabilities required for handling sensitive data appropriately.
And keeping things running reliably.
That's covered in the Deliver Service and Support, DSS domain. DSS-04 Managed Continuity is vital for a hospital. It ensures the continuous availability of patient data for critical care operations, especially during emergencies involving VVIPs. This requires robust, regularly tested backup procedures, disaster recovery plans, and business continuity plans. DSS-05, as mentioned, covers managing the actual security services, things like identity and access management, IAM, with granular controls for VVIP data access, endpoint security, network security, and continuous security monitoring services needed to protect the data.
Are there controls within business processes themselves?
Yes. DSS-06, Managed Business Process Controls, focuses on embedding data-related controls directly into the hospital's core clinical and administrative workflows. Think about specific automated checks required during the VVIP patient registration process, or perhaps automated alerts generated by the system if unusual access patterns to VVIP records are detected.
And finally, how does COBIT ensure this is all working and compliant?
That's handled by the Monitor, Evaluate, and Assess, MEA domain. MEA01, Managed Performance and Conformance Monitoring, is about continuously tracking the performance of the data governance system itself and ensuring ongoing conformance with internal policies and external regulations like Act 843. This involves collecting and analyzing metrics on data quality, security incidents, access violations, etc. MEA02, Managed System of Internal Control, focuses on establishing, maintaining, and evaluating the effectiveness of the internal controls over data, often through regular internal and external audits. And MEA03, Managed Compliance with External Requirements, explicitly requires processes to ensure and, importantly, demonstrate compliance with all external regulations like Act 843 and any other legal or contractual obligations. which is particularly critical for a high-profile institution like Apex Health serving a sensitive clientele. Demonstrating compliance is key.
So implementing COBIT at Apex Health would involve understanding their unique context and strategy, applying COBIT's goals cascade to link stakeholder needs down to specific data governance objectives, like selecting APO14, DSS05, EDM03, MEA03 as priorities, using COBIT's design factors to tailor the framework to the high-security, VVIP-focused, Ghana-regulated environment, implementing the selected control processes with a focus on security, access, quality, and compliance for sensitive data, establishing clear RACI charts for roles and responsibilities related to these processes, focusing heavily on risk management, guided by EDM03, and using the MEA domain for continuous monitoring, auditing, and optimization.
Exactly. COBIT's real strength for Apex Health lies in its comprehensive, structured, auditable, and business-aligned nature. It provides a robust framework suitable for demonstrating rigorous due diligence and maintaining a strong, verifiable control environment, which is absolutely paramount given the stakes involved.
Okay, comprehensive and control-focused. Let's switch to the CMMI Data Management Maturity DMM model next. You said this framework focuses on an evolutionary journey assessing current capabilities and building a structured path for systematic improvement. How would Apex Health use this kind of approach?
The core philosophy of the DMM for Apex Health would be about embarking on a deliberate evolutionary journey to objectively understand where they currently stand in their data management capabilities, particularly around data quality, security, and governance for their critical patient data, especially VVIP data. Then, based on that assessment, they'd identify specific gaps and systematically implement improved processes to reach higher levels of maturity over time. It's really about building sustainable, repeatable, institutionalized good practices, not just implementing ad hoc fixes, which is crucial for handling VVIP data consistently, reliably, and safely in the long run.
And it uses those maturity levels to gauge progress, right? Can you recap those briefly in the Apex context?
Yes, typically 5 levels. Level 1, performed, means processes are happening, but they're ad hoc, inconsistent, maybe heroic efforts by individuals. This level represents significant unacceptable risk for VVIP data, so Apex Health absolutely must operate far beyond it. Level 2, managed, means basic practices are in place, perhaps managed within individual departments or clinical units. Processes are planned and monitored at a local level, but they aren't standardized across the entire hospital. Maybe some units, like the dedicated presidential wing, might have informally reached this level for their own procedures, but consistent enterprise-wide maturity is the goal.
And level 3 defined. You said this is a key target.
Yes, achieving level 3 is a crucial target for an organization like Apex Health. At this level, processes are standardized, documented, and formally institutionalized across the entire organization. For Apex, this would mean having hospital-wide approved, documented policies and procedures for data governance, data security that meet and likely exceed Act 843 requirements, data quality management, and data operations. It means having a consistent documented process for requesting, approving, and auditing access to VVIP data that everyone follows, regardless of department.
And beyond level 3.
Level 4, measured or quantitatively managed, involves using statistical techniques and detailed metrics to actively manage and control process performance, making outcomes more predictable. At this level, Apex Health would be systematically collecting and analyzing detailed metrics on things like VVIP data quality accuracy rates, the number and type of security incidents, access request processing times, and potentially using statistical process control or predictive analytics to manage data risks proactively. Level 5, optimized, represents the pinnacle of focus on continuous improvement and innovation. Organizations at this level are proactively seeking out cutting-edge technologies and methods to further enhance VVIP data protection, fostering a deeply ingrained culture of learning and improvement and actively anticipating future threats or evolving stakeholder needs.
So Apex Health would use the DMM framework to first figure out its current maturity level across different data management areas, and then build a roadmap to climb towards a higher target level, like level 3 or 4 initially.
Exactly. And the DMM guides this improvement journey by focusing on specific process areas, PAs. Applying these PAs helps identify strengths and weaknesses. For example, under the PA data management strategy, Apex Health would need to develop a formal documented strategy that explicitly addresses the unique needs and risks associated with their sensitive clientele, prioritizing confidentiality, integrity, security, Act 843 compliance, and potentially liaising with national security protocols. This strategy would outline clear goals and priorities for improving data management maturity across the hospital.
What are some other key process areas for Apex?
Communications is vital. Ensuring clear communication channels exist, including establishing discrete protocols for handling sensitive VVIP matters and making sure all relevant staff are appropriately informed about policies and procedures. The Data Management Business Case PA guides justifying the significant investments needed for robust data governance, strongly highlighting the critical importance of protecting VVIP data, maintaining patient trust and safety, and avoiding potentially catastrophic reputational damage or national security implications from mismanagement. Awareness and training is another dedicated PA, emphasizing the need for comprehensive, recurring training for all staff on data governance principles and policies, but also requiring specialized intensive training modules specifically for personnel who handle VVIP data, focusing sharply on security awareness, like resisting targeted social engineering, ethical obligations, and the severe consequences of breaches.
Governance management itself is a process area.
Yes, this PA focuses on formalizing the data governance function itself. It guides establishing that high-level council with senior clinical, administrative, IT, legal, and security representation. It covers formally appointing specific data owners, like the head of presidential medical records, and data stewards, like a senior nurse coordinating data quality in the VIP wing. And it involves defining clear decision-making processes and escalation paths, especially for urgent matters concerning VVIP data. Another key PA is business glossary, ensuring a hospital-wide, clear, consistent set of definitions exists for critical data elements, including medical terminology and any specific VVIP care terminology.
Metadata is crucial again here.
Absolutely. The metadata management PA requires establishing processes and potentially tools to capture, manage, and utilize metadata effectively. This includes technical, business, and operational metadata, and crucially for Apex, robust security and sensitivity classifications, which would involve specific tags or markers for VVIP data to ensure appropriate handling rules are automatically applied or easily identified. The Data Quality Strategy PA mandates developing a specific, documented strategy with extremely high, potentially zero tolerance, targets for errors in critical VVIP data fields, like allergies, medications. It requires a clear plan for measurement, monitoring, and continuous improvement of data quality.
And the actual quality work.
That's covered by PAs like data profiling, regularly analyzing databases, especially those holding VVIP data to understand data characteristics and identify anomalies, data quality assessment, formal processes for measuring data quality against defined standards involving rigorous checks and validation for VVIP records, and data cleansing, defined procedures for correcting identified errors, ensuring corrections are prompt, accurate, and subject to strict controls and audits, especially for any changes made to VVIP data, along with root cause analysis to prevent recurrence.
What about defining data needs and managing its life cycle?
Data requirements definition, PA, ensures that the data needed for clinical care, administration, reporting, and compliance is clearly defined and documented, paying specific attention to the unique needs and confidentiality constraints surrounding VVIPs. Data Lifecycle Management PA requires having formal policies and procedures covering data from its creation or acquisition all the way through to its secure destruction, ensuring compliance with Ghanaian law, like Act 843 retention periods, implementing specific, highly secure archival protocols for VVIP records, acknowledging their potential national significance and long-term retention needs, maintaining the required level of security throughout the entire lifecycle, and ensuring robust, secure backup and recovery processes are in place and tested.
Architecture and integration are covered too.
Yes. The architectural approach PA guides designing a secure and resilient data architecture, likely involving network segmentation, potentially dedicated secure enclaves for VVIP data storage and processing, and strong alignment between physical and logical security controls. Data integration PA focuses on ensuring that any integration between key systems, EHR, LIS, PAC, specialized VVIP monitoring tools, is done securely, maintaining data integrity, strictly adhering to access controls at the integration points, and likely using secure authenticated APIs.
And supporting processes.
Other important PAs include measurement and analysis, defining, collecting, analyzing, and reporting metrics on data governance performance, data quality scores, security incidents, compliance levels, etc., to the DG Council and management. Process management, formalizing, documenting, measuring, and continuously improving the data governance processes themselves, ensuring consistency, providing training on processes, and auditing adherence. And risk management, developing a specific data risk management framework, systematically identifying, assessing, prioritizing, and mitigating data-related risks, with an extreme focus on the high-impact risks associated with VVIP data, such as unauthorized disclosure, reputational damage, or national security implications, and implementing controls based directly on these risk assessments.
Okay, so Apex Health would use the DMM by first committing to the process, scoping the assessment, likely prioritizing VVIP data governance and quality initially, conducting a thorough assessment, either self-assessment or using a certified third party, to determine their current maturity level against these PAs, analyzing the gaps, prioritizing areas for improvement based on risk and impact on their unique clientele, developing a phased roadmap with specific projects and resources, implementing those improvements, monitoring progress, and then reassessing maturity periodically to track progress and drive continuous improvement, aiming to institutionalize these better practices.
That's the core DMM improvement cycle. Its real strength for Apex Health is providing that structured, measurable path towards building genuinely mature, reliable, and continuously improving data management and governance capabilities. This is invaluable for achieving and, importantly, demonstrating excellence and trustworthiness in the handling of incredibly critical VVIP data over the long term.
A structured path to maturity. Okay, next up is the ISO IEC 38500 series, particularly 38505, now one focusing on data governance. You mentioned this one is unique because it targets the governing body, the board. How would this apply at Apex Health?
Exactly. The core philosophy here is that Apex Health's ultimate governing body, likely their board of directors or equivalent highest authority, takes direct and explicit responsibility for the governance of data within the hospital. They aren't just delegating it, they are actively involved in evaluating, directing, and monitoring the organization's data practices. The goal is to ensure these practices strongly support the hospital's core mission, providing secure, high-quality VVIP care, effectively manage the associated high risks, and guarantee unwavering compliance with laws like Act 843. It's about embedding data consciousness, responsibility, and oversight at the absolute highest level of the organization.
So it's really about the board's active role and mindset. How does the framework guide them?
Precisely. The framework outlines 6 core principles that the governing body should apply using a simple but powerful task model. Evaluate, direct, monitor. Let's look at the principles. Principle 1 is responsibility. The board must actively evaluate if clear accountability for data exists throughout the organization. Do people understand their roles regarding data? They must then direct management to establish and document these roles clearly. Example, formally appointing a CDO or head of data governance, ensuring data owners and stewards are designated, ensure all staff are made aware of their obligations under Act 843 and internal policies, and critically, the board itself must formally accept ultimate accountability for data governance outcomes. Finally, they monitor adherence through regular reports, reviewing findings from significant incident investigations, especially any involving VVIP data, examining audit results, and ensuring management addresses any identified failures promptly.
Okay, principle 2 is strategy. How does the board engage there?
The board evaluates how the hospital's data assets are currently supporting its mission, particularly regarding the provision of safe and confidential VVIP care. They assess whether the existing data strategy adequately addresses the unique risks and requirements associated with their clientele and considers future data needs. They then direct management to develop and maintain a formal data strategy that is explicitly aligned with the hospital's overall strategic objectives, clearly prioritizing security, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and full Act 843 compliance. They might issue specific directives regarding investments in data quality initiatives, advanced security technologies, or ethical data use guidelines. They monitor the implementation and effectiveness of this strategy through key performance indicators, KPIs, risk reports presented by management and the CDO, and regular strategic reviews.
Principle 3 is acquisition. This covers getting new systems or data.
Yes. The board evaluates the processes the hospital uses for acquiring new data systems or collecting significant new types of data, especially if they involve VVIP information. Is the proposed data collection truly justified? Have the associated risks been thoroughly assessed? They direct management to implement rigorous due diligence processes for any new technology that will handle sensitive data, ensuring privacy and security by design principles are applied from the very outset. They ensure data collection practices adhere to data minimization principles, collect only what's necessary. They monitor major system acquisitions and periodically review the justification for collecting highly sensitive data through management reports and risk assessments provided to the board or a relevant committee.
Principle 4 is performance. What does the board look at here?
The board evaluates whether the data the hospital relies on is consistently accurate, reliable, available when needed, and adequately protected. Are the data governance systems, processes, and controls performing effectively? They direct management to establish clear, measurable performance metrics for key aspects like data quality, security, e.g. system uptime, incident response times, number and severity of security events, and data availability, especially for critical systems supporting VVIP care. They set clear performance expectations for the data governance program overall. They monitor this performance through high-level dashboards, summaries of data quality audits, security incident reports, demanding detailed reviews and root cause analyses for any VVIP incidents, system availability metrics, and feedback from key stakeholders, including senior clinical staff involved in VVIP care.
Principle 5 is conformance or compliance. This must be absolutely central for Apex Health with Act 843 and their clientele.
Absolutely central. The board evaluates the hospital's adherence to all relevant external requirements, including Ghana's Act 843, medical confidentiality laws, potentially specific VVIP handling directives from the government, as well as adherence to the hospital's own internal data policies. They direct management to establish and maintain a robust compliance framework, implement clear policies and procedures that translate legal and ethical requirements into operational practice, ensure mandatory data privacy impact assessments, DPIAs, are conducted for any new or significant processing of VVIP data, as required by Act 843, ensure third-party agreements contain stringent data protection clauses, and mandate regular independent audits of data practices specifically focused on compliance. They monitor compliance through regular reports from the hospital's compliance officer and legal counsel, reviewing internal and external audit findings, and staying informed about updates or enforcement actions from regulators like the Act 843 Commission. Any significant nonconformance related to VVIP data would require immediate board attention and documented action.
And the final principle, Principle 6, is human behavior, respecting human factors. This seems crucial for maintaining that culture of confidentiality.
It really is. The board evaluates the prevailing organizational culture around data handling. Is staff awareness of the extreme sensitivity of VVIP confidentiality consistently high? Are the data handling policies practical and easy for staff to follow in their daily work? Are patient rights, especially concerning their data, being respected at all times? They direct management to actively foster an ethical organizational culture that prioritizes data responsibility, privacy, and security as core values. They champion the development and delivery of comprehensive training programs explicitly tailored to the sensitivity of their clientele and the potential consequences of errors. They ensure clear policies support desired behaviors and discourage risky ones, and that effective channels exist for staff to report concerns or potential violations without fear of reprisal. They also oversee that robust and transparent processes are in place for obtaining informed patient consent where applicable. They monitor the effectiveness of these efforts by reviewing culture survey results, analyzing incident reports where human factors were involved, tracking training completion rates, and considering feedback from any internal ethics committee.
And that evaluate, direct, monitor loop is the core task model the board uses for all these principles.
Yes, that's the central mechanism proposed by ISO IEC 38500. Apex Health Board would use this cycle continuously. They evaluate the current state, future needs, the strategic importance of VVIP data, the evolving threat landscape, their obligations under Act 843, and the effectiveness of existing controls. Based on this valuation, they direct management on setting strategy, developing policies, assigning responsibilities, allocating necessary resources, and setting clear performance expectations, always with a heightened focus on the unique requirements for VVIP data. Then they monitor the implementation outcomes through structured reports, risk assessments, summaries of security incidents and compliance status, especially regarding Act 843 and specific VVIP protocols, and the results of independent audits.
So implementing ISO IE 38500 at Apex Health would start with educating the board and securing their commitment to actively engage in data governance. They'd need to formally adopt these principles, ensure clear governance structures are in place that are accountable up to the board, integrate data governance oversight into their existing corporate governance routines, like board meetings and committee structures, define specific reporting mechanisms, perhaps requiring certain VVIP-related data metrics to be reported directly to a dedicated board committee, like audit or risk, mandate independent assurance, like audits reporting directly to the board or its committee, and schedule regular reviews of the effectiveness of the board's own oversight activities regarding data.
Exactly. The real strength of using ISO IE 38500 for Apex Health is its explicit top-down principle-based approach. It ensures that data governance isn't just an operational task delegated down the chain, but a strategic imperative driven and overseen by the highest levels of leadership. This fosters a pervasive culture of responsible, ethical, secure, and compliant management of incredibly sensitive data, which is absolutely fundamental for maintaining the trust of their unique clientele and, indeed, the nation.
Driving it from the very top. Okay, now for TOJIF, the Open Group Architecture Framework. This one, as you said, is about enterprise architecture, how all the pieces of the organization fit together. How does data governance get integrated into that broader architectural view for Apex Health?
TOGAF's philosophy is about systematically designing and managing the entire enterprise architecture, covering business processes, applications, data, and technology infrastructure to meet the organization's strategic requirements. For Apex Health, this translates into architecting their entire data landscape specifically to meet their exceptionally stringent requirements for security, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and compliance, especially with Act 843, given their unique mission of serving VVIPs. It's about planning and governing the transition towards this target architectural state, systematically weaving data governance principles and requirements throughout TOGAF's core process, the Architecture Development Method, ADM.
And this happens phase by phase within that ADM cycle.
Exactly. The ADM provides the structured approach. In the preliminary phase, Apex Health would define the scope of their enterprise architecture effort, ensuring it clearly includes critical data domains, especially VVIP patient data. They'd establish an architecture capability, meaning a dedicated team with the right mix of skills, including expertise in data architecture, security architecture, healthcare information systems, and crucially, Ghanaian healthcare regulations like Act 843. They would tailor the standard TOJI-AVE method to fit Apex Health's highly sensitive context and meticulously identify all key stakeholders, including internal leaders and staff, and potentially involving discrete considerations for external VVIP representative input where appropriate. Crucially, in this phase, they would define core architecture principles that will guide all subsequent design decisions, fundamental tenets like highest security standards by default, strict VVIP data access governed by verifiable need to know, and full Act 843 compliance as a foundational design constraint.
Okay, that sets the stage. Then phase A, architecture vision.
This phase is about setting the high-level direction and securing buy-in. Here, the architecture team, working with leadership, would develop a clear data governance vision that is tightly aligned with the hospital's overall mission. They'd envision the target state: a highly trusted, demonstrably secure data environment that guarantees absolute confidentiality and integrity, particularly for Ghana's leadership data, thereby supporting excellent clinical care, maintaining national confidence, and ensuring full legal and ethical compliance. They'd identify specific business goals for data that the architecture must support, such as achieving 100% verifiable Act 843 compliance across all systems, preventing any unauthorized VVIP data access or disclosure incidents, ensuring exceptionally high data quality to support critical clinical decisions, and streamlining secure, auditable access for authorized personnel. They would also clearly define the scope and constraints for the architecture work, identifying specific VVIP data domains, critical systems, and key processes that are in scope, while explicitly recognizing that security and confidentiality requirements are non-negotiable constraints on the design. Securing formal approval and buy-in from top leadership for this vision is essential before proceeding.
Phase B, business architecture, but with a strong data focus for this context.
Yes. In this phase, the team would analyze key business processes, specifically those involving sensitive data, like the VVIP patient registration and verification process, clinical treatment workflows, how medical records are updated and accessed, and any highly restricted procedures for sharing information, even internally between specialists. They would meticulously identify the data that is created, used, or modified within these business contexts. What are the critical data entities, like patient record, treatment plan, lab result, who uses this data, and for what specific business purpose? They would also define the data-related roles within the business architecture, linking them clearly to the data owner and data steward concepts defined by the governance framework. A gap analysis here would identify where current business processes might hinder the achievement of data governance goals, particularly insecure manual steps, lack of data validation, or fail to adequately support them.
Phase C, information systems architectures, with a really deep dive into the data architecture component. This sounds like the core of it for DG.
It is a core phase for embedding data governance architecturally. Here, the team designs the detailed target data architecture. This involves developing comprehensive logical and physical data models, especially for patient records, ensuring they include a granular sensitivity classification for each individual data attribute within the records, applying heightened classifications, presidential confidential, judicial sensitive, for VVIP-related data elements. The architecture must explicitly define the required data security and access controls, specifying granular data classification schemes that drive the implementation of access control policies based on user role, data sensitivity, and context. Need to know is enforced architecturally, not just by policy. It mandates technologies like strong multi-factor authentication, MFA, and privileged access management, PMM, for IT administrators handling these systems. Data lifecycle management policies are translated into architectural requirements. The architecture must support secure data creation, secure storage, potentially requiring dedicated physically and logically segregated secure enclaves for VVIP data, controlled usage tracking, highly restricted and audited data sharing mechanisms, if any, secure archiving procedures, and verifiable data destruction disposal methods compliant with Act 843 retention schedules, potentially even considering requirements for secure long-term national archival for certain VVIP records.
What other aspects are defined in the data architecture during Phase C?
Several other critical aspects. Data quality standards are built into the design. The architecture must specify requirements for data validation rules, automated cleansing processes where appropriate, and mechanisms for measuring and monitoring data quality metrics directly within the systems. Master data management, MDM architecture, is defined to ensure a single, accurate, consistent view of critical entities like patients, ensuring flawless VVIP identification and linkage is paramount, practitioners, and services. Data integration architecture specifies how different systems, EHR, LAS, PEXA, billing, etc., will be integrated securely, likely using secure APIs and standardized protocols, like secured HL7 HIR, ensuring data integrity is maintained during transit and that access controls are enforced across integrated systems. Metadata management architecture involves designing the structure and requirements for a central metadata repository or catalog, specifying that it must capture comprehensive business, technical, and operational metadata, including crucial security classifications, data lineage information, clear data definitions, and links to relevant data governance policies. Auditing and monitoring requirements are defined architecturally. The systems must be designed to generate comprehensive, immutable audit trails, logging all access, viewing, and modification of sensitive data, especially VVIP data, and support real-time security monitoring and alerting capabilities. Finally, compliance mapping ensures the architecture explicitly supports all relevant requirements of Act 843, such as capabilities for managing data subject rights, access, correction, deletion requests, handling consent, and facilitating timely data breach notifications if necessary.
Okay, Phase D, technology architecture, then selects the specific technologies needed to realize that data architecture.
Exactly. This phase focuses on the how from a technology perspective. It involves selecting the specific infrastructure for data security, choosing secure server platforms, implementing strong encryption technologies for data at rest, for example, AES 256 for databases, storage volumes, backups, and data in transit, for example, mandating TLS 1.3 for all internal network traffic-carrying patient data, deploying next-generation firewalls, intrusion detection prevention systems, IDSES, and robust data loss prevention, DLP solutions at network egress points and potentially on endpoints. It selects the specific identity and access management IAM systems needed to implement the required granular access controls, MFA, and PAM solutions. It chooses the audit and monitoring tools for collecting, storing, and analyzing security logs and generating real-time alerts. It specifies the requirements for robust data backup and recovery technology, ensuring solutions provide encrypted, frequently tested backups for VVIP records, stored in secure locations, potentially including physically separate, air-gapped, or vaulted storage, and meeting defined recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO. It also ensures physical security considerations for data centers, server rooms, and even user access terminals, aligned with the high security requirements of the logical data architecture.
Phase E, opportunities and solutions. This is where they identify the actual projects needed.
Yes. In this phase, the architecture team consolidates all the gaps identified between the current state and the target architecture defined in phases B, C, and D. This includes gaps in data governance capabilities, policies, processes, and enabling technologies. They then identify potential solutions and define specific projects or initiatives required to bridge these gaps. Examples for Apex might include a project to implement enhanced MFA, specifically for systems holding VVIP data, an initiative to develop and roll out new VVIP data handling policies and training, a project to select and implement a metadata management tool, or a project focused solely on ensuring and documenting Act 843 compliance features. They then develop a high-level implementation roadmap, prioritizing these projects based on risk mitigation potential, prioritizing high-risk VVIP security gaps first, costs, expected benefits, and dependencies between projects.
Phase F migration planning then gets into the details of how to execute those projects.
Right. This phase involves creating detailed project plans for the prioritized initiatives identified in Phase E. It defines the specific transition steps needed to move from the current state to the target architecture, potentially involving phased rollouts for new systems or security measures, piloting new VVIP-specific protocols in a controlled manner before full deployment, and planning for any necessary secure data migration activities. A critical aspect here is ensuring business continuity. The migration planning must ensure that the implementation process doesn't disrupt critical hospital operations, especially VVIP patient care, or compromise data security during the transition period.
Phase G implementation governance oversees the actual building and deployment work.
Yes, this phase provides crucial oversight during the implementation of the projects defined in the roadmap. The enterprise architecture team provides architectural oversight, ensuring that the solutions being built or configured align with the defined target architecture and adhere to the established standards and principles. They perform regular compliance checks, verifying that the deployed solutions meet the specified architectural requirements, security standards, and Act 843 compliance needs. Formal change control processes are used to manage any necessary changes to the architecture or implementation plan that arise during deployment. And importantly, this phase involves the practical enforcement of the new data governance rules and policies as the new systems and processes come online. It's where the rubber meets the road.
And finally, Phase H architecture change management ensures the architecture stays relevant over time.
Exactly. Data governance and the purporting enterprise architecture aren't static, one-time activities. This phase establishes processes for ongoing monitoring of the effectiveness of the implemented data governance framework and the supporting architecture. Are policies being followed? Are security controls working as intended? Is data quality improving? It defines a formal process to adapt to change, allowing the architecture and governance framework to evolve in response to new business needs, like new VVIP service requirements or care protocols, emerging security threats, updates to regulations like Act 843, or advancements in technology. It ensures a cycle of continuous improvement for data governance, feeding lessons learned and monitoring results back into the architecture planning process.
And underpinning all of this within TOGIAF is requirements management, which happens throughout the cycle.
Yes, it's a central continuous process within the ADM. It involves meticulously gathering, analyzing, documenting, and managing all the data governance-related requirements throughout every phase of the architecture development cycle. This includes security requirements, specifying confidentiality, integrity, availability needs based on data classification, compliance requirements, detailing specific Act 843 obligations, ethical considerations, data quality requirements, auditing and monitoring requirements, and of course, the specific stringent VVIP data handling requirements derived from risk assessments and operational protocols. These requirements drive the entire architecture design.
And key TOGIAF concepts like the architecture repository are important here too.
Very much so. The architecture repository acts as the central storage location for all the artifacts produced during the ADM cycle, including data governance artifacts like data models, policies, standards, security architecture documents, Act 843 compliance mapping documentation, etc. The enterprise continuum concept allows Apex Health to leverage and tailor existing industry reference models or standards within their specific architecture. And establishing a strong architecture capability means having a dedicated, skilled team embedded within the organization to ensure that data governance remains an integral part of the enterprise architecture practice, ensuring sustainability.
So, implementing TOGIAF successfully at Apex Health would require strong executive sponsorship, like all frameworks, really. A dedicated team with a mix of business, data, security, and technical architecture skills, likely taking an iterative approach starting with the most critical VVIP data domains, ensuring data governance is truly integrated into all hospital planning and operations, not seen as a separate silo, and continuous, clear communication with all stakeholders throughout the process. TOGIAF's strength for Apex seems to be its holistic, structured approach to designing a well-governed data environment that is explicitly aligned with the hospital's unique and critical strategic imperatives, providing a robust framework for managing highly sensitive data, ensuring compliance, and enabling strategic decision-making based on trusted information.
It provides that comprehensive, integrated architectural blueprint for governance.
Okay, one framework left to explore in the Apex context,
Yeah.
CDMC, the Cloud Data Management Capabilities Framework. Now, even if Apex Health is primarily operating on-premise, you mentioned its control-oriented principles are still highly valuable, right? How would it apply?
Absolutely. CDMC, while developed with cloud and hybrid environments in mind, really emphasizes establishing a disciplined, fine-grained, control-based environment for managing and protecting data. Its core philosophy for Apex Health would be to establish extremely rigorous, demonstrable controls and implement active management and protection for all data, but with an intense, almost forensic emphasis on VVIP data. It provides a framework for implementing standardized, often automated, and highly auditable capabilities that instill a deep level of discipline. This approach can significantly strengthen their posture even on-premise and potentially future-proof them if they ever consider secure cloud options down the line.
So let's look at how its specific components and capabilities would apply to Apex Health's situation, starting with governance and accountability.
Under this component, CDMC guides establishing rigorous data sharing agreements. For Apex Health, this means meticulously drafted agreements specifying the exact limited purpose, required security controls, audit rights, and explicit Act 843 compliance requirements for the extremely rare instances where VVIP data might need to be shared, even internally between departments or with highly vetted external specialists. Data sovereignty and cross-border management capabilities are critical, enforcing strict policies that mandate data localization within Ghana for all VVIP data, prohibiting any transfer outside the country unless absolutely legally mandated, approved based on formal national security considerations, and fully compliant with Act 843 provisions on cross-border transfers. Regulatory compliance management capabilities involve having robust processes and automated controls where possible for ensuring continuous compliance with Act 843 of the relevant healthcare laws and any specific government or VVIP protocols. This includes regular automated checks, compliance reporting, mandatory DPIAs before processing VVIP data in new ways, and maintaining detailed records of processing activities. And data governance roles and responsibilities must be clearly defined, documented, and enforced, specifying owners, like the CMO or VVIP unit heads, stewards, senior clinical or administrative staff managing specific data sets, and custodians, IT managing the infrastructure, ensuring clarity for accountability under the intense scrutiny expected for VVIP data.
Cataloging and classification is another key area in CDMC.
Yes, this requires implementing a comprehensive data catalog capability. This catalog must cover all systems holding patient data, capturing rich metadata, including specific VVIP data indicators, full data lineage, tracking data from source through transformations, movements, and access, absolutely crucial for audits and ensuring integrity, data quality scores, and detailed security classifications. The data classification capability involves defining and consistently applying a granular classification scheme, perhaps with multiple levels, including designations like Level 6, Apex Top Secret Presidential Medical, which then automatically drives the required security controls, access rules, encryption levels, retention periods. Data lineage capabilities must allow tracing the complete history of VVIP data elements. And sensitive data discovery capabilities are essential, using advanced tools to continuously scan all potential data stores, structured databases, unstructured file shares, email systems to accurately identify and inventory all instances of VVIP and other sensitive data, ensuring none exist in unauthorized or unprotected locations.
Access and usage controls sound like they'd be extremely stringent under CDMC.
Absolutely paramount and very granular. Data access entitlement and provisioning capabilities mean implementing strict least privilege access by default and using fine-grained role-based access control, RBAC, and potentially attribute-based access control, ABAC. Access requests for VVIP data would require multi-level electronic approval workflows, e.g., requester's manager, data steward, data owner, VVIP unit head, security officer, with mandatory detailed justification. Provisioning must be timely but fully automated and auditable. Controlled, heavily logged, and immediately reviewed emergency break glass procedures are necessary but strictly managed. Data access monitoring and reporting requires sophisticated tools providing continuous monitoring of all access events, successful or failed attempts related to VVIP data, generating real-time alerts for any suspicious activity, e.g. access from unusual locations at unusual times, excessive data access volume. Detailed, tamper-proof audit logs must be generated, centrally collected, and regularly reviewed, potentially using automated analytics.
And CDMC goes beyond just access, looking at usage too.
Yes, the data usage monitoring and control capability aims to monitor how authorized users are actually interacting with VVIP data once they've accessed it. It involves implementing controls where feasible to prevent unauthorized actions like copying sensitive data to removable media, printing highly classified records, potentially disabling print functions or requiring specific approvals, or attempting to exfiltrate data. This might involve technical controls like endpoint DLP or user behavior analytics, UBA tools designed to spot anomalies in user interaction patterns with sensitive data that might indicate insider threats or compromised accounts. Robust identity and access management (IAM) solutions are foundational, enforcing strong MFA for all users accessing any patient data, potentially using even more stringent MFA factors like biometrics or hardware tokens for accessing VVIP data, ensuring unique user IDs for everyone, no shared accounts allowed, especially for privileged access, and managing the life cycle of identities and credentials securely.
Protection and privacy capabilities under CDMC. Encryption must be key.
Mandatory and comprehensive. The data encryption capability mandates strong end-to-end encryption for all VVIP data. At rest, using algorithms like AES-256 for data stored in databases, file systems, and backups, coupled with robust cryptographic key management practices, and in transit, using protocols like TLS 1.3 to encrypt data moving across internal networks and any external connections. Data masking and anonymization capabilities are essential for any potential and extremely rare secondary use of VVIP data. Techniques like irreversible anonymization or robust pseudonymization with strong controls must be used for analytics to mitigate re-identification risk, and this usage would be highly scrutinized and likely require ethics board approval. Data masking techniques will be required for protecting sensitive data used in non-production environments, like testing or development. Data loss prevention, DLP solutions, should be deployed strategically across endpoints, network egress points, and potentially key data stores to detect and prevent the unauthorized exfiltration of sensitive data via channels like email, USB drives, web uploads, etc., with extremely strict policies configured specifically for patterns matching VVIP data. And data privacy impact assessments, DPIA, are a mandatory capability required by Act 843 to be conducted before implementing any new systems or processes that will handle VVIP data, systematically identifying and mitigating privacy risks upfront.
Data lifecycle management under CDMC.
This involves capabilities to manage data securely throughout its entire existence. Data retention and archival capabilities require enforcing defined retention policies based on Ghanaian law and clinical needs, implementing specific, highly secure archival protocols for VVIP data, recognizing its potential national significance, which might require secure, long-term, potentially immutable storage solutions, ensuring the required security level is maintained even in archives. Data deletion and disposal capabilities require using secure, certified methods to ensure VVIP data is irretrievably removed from all systems and media at the end of its mandated retention period, assuming no legal or national requirement for perpetual archival exists, preventing any possibility of later recovery. Data backup and recovery capabilities need to ensure robust, frequent, encrypted, and regularly tested backups for all critical systems holding VVIP data, with backups stored in secure, geographically separate locations, potentially including on-site vaults, air-gap storage, or secure off-site facilities within Ghana, and clearly defined achievable RTO and RPO targets documented and tested.
And what about data portability and interoperability? That seems tricky with VVIP data.
Extremely tricky and likely very limited in practice. CDMC guides having capabilities here, but they be applied cautiously. Data format and standards capability encourages using secure standardized formats where possible, like secured HL7 FHIR, but for the extremely rare instances where VVIP data might need to be exchanged, for example, with a consulting specialist under strict agreements, it would require highly secured, mutually agreed upon formats, end-to-end encryption, and strong mutual authentication between systems. Data movement and migration capabilities require meticulous planning, ensuring full encryption during transit, and performing rigorous validation of data integrity and confidentiality whenever VVIP data needs to be moved between systems or locations, for example, during a system upgrade. Underpinning all this, CDMC is guided by core principles that are highly relevant for Apex Health. Ensuring you know where all your identifiable data is, especially VVIP data. Ensuring there is clear defined ownership and accountability. Enforcing strict, auditable, least privilege controlled access, ensuring the data is protected robustly at all times, maintaining data quality and integrity, and ensuring any data movement is secure and controlled.
So, the implementation strategy using CDMC principles at Apex Health, even if primarily on-premise, would involve assessing their current state against these detailed capabilities, prioritizing implementation based on risk, likely focusing immediately on capabilities addressing the highest VVIP data protection risks and Act 843 compliance needs, such as classification, sensitive data discovery, access control, encryption, DLP, and monitoring. developing or updating policies to explicitly reflect CDMC principles and the stringent controls required for VVIP data, investing in the necessary enabling technologies like advanced IAM, data discovery tools, DLP, encryption platforms, providing intensive specialized training for staff with VVIP data access, emphasizing these controls and their importance, implementing rigorous audit and continuous monitoring processes to ensure controls are effective and policies are followed, and potentially using CDMC as a guiding framework for any future proofing efforts, such as evaluating potential secure cloud adoption strategies regulations ever permit and the security can be guaranteed.
Exactly. CDMC's strength for Apex Health, even applied on-premise, is its highly disciplined, control-oriented approach and its focus on building measurable, auditable capabilities. This provides the highest level of assurance for VVIP data protection, significantly strengthens their overall data governance posture, and provides a clear framework for demonstrating compliance and managing extreme data risks effectively.
That was an absolutely incredible journey through how each of these 7 distinct frameworks could be specifically tailored and applied to guide data governance at Apex Health. It really highlights, as you said earlier, how context truly is everything.
It really does. Seeing the frameworks applied in such a unique, undeniably high-stakes scenario brings the principles and components to life in a way that abstract descriptions just can't.
And based on dissecting this Apex Health example and reflecting on the source material overall, there are some absolutely crucial lessons here for anyone studying business analytics or planning to head into a data-related professional role. Absolutely. I think the first and perhaps most important lesson made crystal clear by the Apex Health case is that context is king. We saw repeatedly how the specific context, the industry, healthcare, specific operating regulations, Ghana's Act 843, the organizational culture, the strategic goals, and most critically, the incredibly sensitive nature of the data itself, VVIP information with national implications, didn't just influence which framework might be a good starting point, but drastically shaped how any chosen framework's principles and components would need to be tailored, prioritized, and implemented. There's simply no effective, one-size-fits-all data governance framework. You must deeply understand the specific environment, the nature of the data, and the unique risks you're trying to manage before you can design an effective solution.
So rule number 1, don't just grab a framework off the shelf and try to force it to fit. Understand the organization's specific situation, needs, and risks first.
Precisely. The second critical lesson, which was strongly emphasized throughout the source material and vividly illustrated by the Apex case, is that executive sponsorship is absolutely non-negotiable. Think about it. Apex Health couldn't possibly implement those stringent, multi-layered security controls, the complex approval workflows required for VVIP data access, or secure the necessary investment in sophisticated security and monitoring technologies without clear, visible, and sustained commitment from the absolute highest levels of leadership, the board of directors and the senior executive management team. Without that unambiguous top-down mandate prioritizing data security, confidentiality, and compliance, like with Act 843, the necessary resources, authority, and cross-departmental cooperation needed to implement demanding governance requirements will inevitably fall short. It just won't happen effectively.
It really does take committed leadership to make something this complex and cross-functional happen and stick.
It absolutely does. The third key lesson is that clearly defined roles and responsibilities are fundamental. We saw how ambiguity regarding who is ultimately accountable or responsible for specific data assets or governance processes leads directly to failure or gaps. The Apex Health case provided vivid examples, needing absolute clarity on who is the designated data owner for presidential medical records versus, say, parliamentary records. Who are the specific data stewards responsible for the daily quality checks and policy adherence within the VIP wing? Who has the authority and under what specific documented circumstances to make the critical decision to grant emergency access to a leader's critical health information? For sensitive data, accountability can't be fuzzy. It needs to be etched in stone, clearly documented, and understood by everyone involved.
The source also touched briefly on policy development best practices, drawing from the case as well.
Yes, it made an important point. While the policies themselves must be comprehensive and rigorous, as evidenced by the level of detail required in the Apex Health examples, covering security, access, quality, ethics, compliance with Act 843, etc., they must also strive to be clear and simple to understand and follow. Policies designed to govern the handling of incredibly sensitive data, like VVIP health records under strict regulations, are useless if the frontline staff who need to apply them daily can't easily understand what's required. Overly complex, jargon-filled, legalistic policies tend to be ignored or misinterpreted, leading directly to noncompliance and increased risk. Effective policies are actionable, accessible, and written with the end user in mind, even while being legally and technically sound.
That's a great point. Rigor doesn't have to mean impenetrable complexity. Now, looking back at this challenging Apex Health case and thinking more generally, what are some common pitfalls that Apex Health, or really any organization trying to implement data governance, might face? What should students be particularly aware of as they enter the field?
That's a good question. Several common pitfalls definitely come to mind, especially when you consider the scale, complexity, and sensitivity illustrated by the Apex scenario. One of the most frequent ones is treating data governance purely as an IT project or initiative. As we discussed extensively, while technology is an essential enabler, data governance is fundamentally about people, business processes, policies, and achieving specific business objectives, like trust, compliance, risk reduction. Focusing only on implementing a new tool or technology without addressing the people, process, and policy aspects is a recipe for failure.
Right, the tech is support, not the whole solution. What else?
Another common pitfall is severely underestimating the required investment and ongoing commitment. Robust data governance isn't free. It requires significant investment, not just in purchasing tools, but crucially in dedicated personnel time, especially for roles like data stewards, who often have other primary job duties. Comprehensive training programs, establishing and running governance structures like councils and working groups, and potentially external expertise for audits or specialized advice. Apex Health's needs are obviously at the extreme end, demanding substantial resources, but even in less sensitive environments, organizations often underestimate the sustained effort required to make governance effective and keep it effective over time. That's not a one-off project.
And the human side, the cultural change aspect.
Lack of effective change management and communication is a huge pitfall, maybe one of the biggest reasons programs fail. Implementing new data handling rules, stricter access controls, or new quality procedures inevitably changes how people do their jobs. Without clear, consistent communication about why these changes are necessary, especially linking them to tangible benefits like improved patient safety, compliance with laws like Act 843, or protecting sensitive information, as in the Apex case, and without providing adequate training and support, you're likely to encounter resistance, workarounds, and ultimately non-compliance. You have to bring people along on the journey.
Don't just impose rules from on high.
Exactly. Another related pitfall is attempting to boil the ocean, trying to implement a comprehensive governance framework across all data domains and all processes simultaneously right from the start. As we saw with the Apex case, a more realistic approach, especially in complex environments, is to prioritize based on risk and business value. Apex Health would almost certainly need to focus its initial, most intensive efforts on the most critical, high-risk data. First the VVIP records, and then phase the implementation of governance controls across other, less sensitive data domains over time, perhaps guided by a maturity model like DMM. Trying to apply extreme rigor everywhere at once is often overwhelming, unsustainable, and can dilute focus from the areas of greatest need.
So, key takeaways on pitfalls. Don't treat it just as IT. Invest sufficiently. People and time, not just tools. Manage the change and communicate constantly. And prioritize, don't try to do everything perfectly everywhere on day one. Focus on the biggest risks first.
Precisely. These lessons, drawn from grappling with the complexity and sensitivity of a scenario like Apex Health, offer invaluable practical insights for anyone preparing to work as a data professional. They highlight the realities beyond the textbook definitions of the frameworks.
Okay, so to wrap up our deep dive today, we started by defining data governance, that essential system of decision rights and accountabilities needed to manage data reliably, securely, and ethically. We explored how data governance frameworks provide the necessary blueprint or structure, outlining key components like clearly defined roles, actionable policies, standardized processes, and enabling technology.
And we examined 7 of the leading frameworks discussed in the source material: DAMA, DMBO, DGI, COBIT, CMI-DMM, ISO IEs 38500, CDMC, and TOGAF, getting a feel for their different strengths, focus areas, and underlying philosophies on how best to approach data governance and management.
Then, we spent considerable time applying each of those 7 frameworks specifically to the detailed case study of Apex Health in Ghana. We saw precisely how the principles and components of each framework could be leveraged to guide the design and implementation of data governance in that incredibly high-stakes, highly sensitive environment, with its focus on protecting VVIP data and ensuring full compliance with Ghana's Act 843.
And that case study really drove home the point that understanding these frameworks isn't just an academic exercise. It provides you, as future data professionals, with a structured way of thinking, a set of tools and approaches to tackle complex real-world data challenges, helping turn potential data chaos into a well-governed, trusted strategic asset for any organization.
And for you, our listener, especially those heading into business analytics or related fields, you will navigate diverse data environments in your careers. Having a solid grasp of these frameworks equips you to better assess organizational needs and data-related risks, recommend appropriate governance structures and controls, and ultimately contribute to responsible, ethical data stewardship, whether you find yourself working with sensitive patient information like at Apex Health, or managing financial data, customer data, research data, or any other critical information asset.
It really comes down to building and maintaining trust in the data, which is the absolute foundation for reliable analytics, sound decision-making, and ethical data use in the digital age. And perhaps, as a final thought to consider as you move forward from this discussion, for an organization like Apex Health, data governance clearly isn't merely a compliance checkbox exercise or just a project aimed at improving operational efficiency. It is fundamentally intertwined with safeguarding the deepest levels of human trust and, given the specific clientele they serve, potentially even national security.
That's a very powerful and sobering dimension to data governance in that context.
It is. So the question to mull over is this. How does acknowledging this profound ethical dimension of data, handling this fundamental duty of confidentiality and trust influence, which specific framework principles or components become the most critical, the non-negotiable priorities, and the different professional contexts you might encounter in your future career? Is it always about optimizing the technology or streamlining the process? Or does the inherent nature, sensitivity, and potential impact of the data itself sometimes elevate certain governance requirements, particularly those related to ethics, privacy, and security, above all others?
Something definitely worth reflecting on. How does the why behind the data shape the how of governing it? A compelling question to carry with you. Thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive into data governance frameworks and their real-world application.
Always a pleasure to explore these critical topics. I hope it was valuable.
We certainly hope this has provided valuable insights for your learning journey and future work. Until next time on The Deep Dive.
Thank you, class. Wow. So you say what this the hospital is what is the okay. You next week I'll show you some video of the hospital. I'm hoping I can show you some nice things about the hospital. Then we can use it. We get more data from them to analyze in class. Thank you very much, Cecil. Okay. You say you want a job there. I saw somebody say he wants a job there. You know, this will your whole family pass. Will your whole family pass the ethical clearance, the security clearance. Anyway, thank you very much. Any question?
What God cannot do does not exist.
Sorry,
I
somebody.
said, what God cannot do does not exist. Will pass.
Amen. I hear you. I hear you. I'll get a video, maybe a YouTube page to show you what they have there. Stuff. Anyway, so please, any questions?
Prof,
Yes.
yes. Actually, the video is very detailed, very long, and very comprehensive. And it looks to me that it covers everything about data governance. And also the example shared, the case study of Apex is also, for me, top-notch. I'm wondering how many organizations can really implement this?
Okay, so we will looking at examples from different organizations from next week going, and we'll analyze each of them and compare it to some of the data governance frameworks we have. In Ghana, I don't know whether everybody has a detailed document like this, but what people try to do is to do something just to align with the Data Protection Act of Ghana. So I think one thing I have to teach you is to let us go to the Data Protection Act of Ghana. Let's go to the one for Europe, that's the GDPR, and then let's go to maybe one for America. Then we will use that one to start analyzing different examples. If I don't show you the basis of what are some of the policies that guide people, you may not know. For example, this is a Ghana case. Everything they kept on referring on Ghana. But when they start talking about something like cross-border data, where they have to share maybe a president's data with a hospital in America, they have to go through the HIPAA. That is another framework that governs health information and information portability with the US and other with internally for US health institutions, and then any health institution in the US wants to work with any other external institution across, beyond the US. So depending on what you are doing and what you are transacting, certain governance frameworks of another country, of another sector or industry can inform you, can affect you. I remember we're doing something. I think I have to show you. Okay, then I have a lot to show you guys. So please remind me. We have a study I did for on the AU level where we're looking at data governance and readiness across Africa. And then we pointed out some of the weaknesses across different companies like the manufacturing, the SME, the health sector, and other sectors. Nibano, please remind me. Let me show them to that. I'll get you a podcast on that one too. Then you guys can listen to it. But looking at what is going on, I want to go progressively. So I'll answer that question. We'll go through looking at the policies that matter. Then after that, we'll apply to different case studies. Then we'll come back to looking at Africa too, so that we can over the next 3 weeks. I want to structure it very well. Otherwise, we'll miss certain things. The most important thing is what you have said. Can you do it? And that's why they were emphasizing that if you want to really approach this, it's better you know the type of institution you have and the resources you have. Let me just give an example. You are a small SME in Hachu, and you do travel and tour. You get students to travel, and then you want to have use a complex complex framework like the one that has focus on the cloud platform, the CMM, CDMC or something like that. You should know that that one may not even apply to you, or you want to use a very detailed one like the DIG. It may not work. If I were you, I would start with the Damabok one. That is a basic comprehensive one that covers almost all the key issues. Then you tick on which of them you want to do. Or then as you grow as an institution, you start layering it and adding other things. For some of the frameworks, some units may not even exist in your organization. You have just an IT manager, one person. We want him to do all this analysis. It may not be healthy. But if you are in University of Ghana, you are let's SEC the Security Commission. The Security No, the other one. The one for
Exchange Commission.
Exchange Commission. Good. Security and Exchange
Yes,
Commission. Good.
Exchange.
I will want you to use both the first one, the Damadog and the Dama framework. Then you use the ISO. The ISO means that the executives have to be involved. I would like you to use the ISO. Then lastly, maybe look, because you are dealing with a lot of maybe cloud platform. Look at the one that also covers cloud platforms. The reason why I'll say that is because the executive one also helps executive board become part of the framework development. And one of the things that I would like to advise in the executive one is that you don't look at just the board of directors, but also look at the internal executive committee, senior management. For example, your head of your head of marketing, your head of procurement, your head of let's say operations, and then you, the CEO yourself, have your internal executive committee. Then you have the external executive committee, which is the board of directors that actually oversee your activities. So both of them can come together and select maybe members from here, members from here, and establish one large governance board that will actually undertake, led by the DGO, that's the data governance officer, to undertake the activity. And sometimes some big organizations, have a consulting firm that will come and do this for them. But a consulting firm, you always have to be very careful. If you're not, you don't sign any very due diligence and confidentiality agreements with them, some of your data information may be given to your your competitors. So there's a lot in here, and I think you should look at your resources before and the sensitivity of your data before you step out. That's why I wanted to use a very complex type of institution to be able to explain everything here. Because if I just use a normal SME or university environment, some of the things will not apply. Okay. Please, how is the clientele determined if it's wholly private owned. Hey, so I can't be telling you all these things. Some of them is beyond my security clearance. Some of NDA. Okay. Just maybe as we watch more case studies from Apex, you'll get to know some of the things. But I'll take your question now. Okay. Yes. Any other question? Mhm. Any other question? Yes, Kingsford. Yeah, maybe take the last one from Kingsford so I can wrap up for the next class. Your turn.
Yes, for me, it's a contribution. Like the whole material is very comprehensive. Just remind me of last year, our organization got certified for ISO 27000, and
Okay.
it has been a very rigorous exercise. And we have to get an ISO. We don't have an ISO officer at the time, so
Okay.
we have to get one. And she couldn't do that alone. We need to get some consultants to come into the picture. And after we got a certification, we rejoiced. But later, she came back in a year telling us that there's something called surveillance audit.
Yeah.
So they have to go back organizing training for us, some online training platform. We have to take quiz every Monday. It's like we are back to school again. And it's very rigorous just to make sure that we are compliant and uh, adhering to those standards. So it's a good thing. And this studies actually brought that home to me to, I mean, practicalize what is happening even in my own space and take it serious.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy about that. I think somebody asked here yesterday whether he can go for the ISO 38500 certificate. I said yeah, but you have to find the body that actually issues that certification because quite a number of them are the consultants that actually help you to achieve it. Quite a number of them are consultants that help you to achieve, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy, as he just mentioned. Because if all your staff are not there and you don't even give them incentives, in terms of like if you support this initiative, you maybe will give you there's some small allowance in the company for that. You are going to be in trouble because how do you expect employees to follow these the terms and the definitions and then also understand all the need for continuous improvement and understand the implication of their individual activities? Somebody is a cleaner. Let me just give an example of Apex Health. Then you go and clean somebody's room. You see a phone and you see maybe some documents lying down. Your eyes will see certain things. Like we saw recently, some judges going to eat at a place and somebody videoing to make it available. That is clear security breach. So the question that comes out that is why Apex Health and maybe Apex may add Apex restaurants and they'll start doing that. They'll start putting that exclusivity because sometimes people working in certain places don't know the essence of the breaching some security protocol. They are just eating and relaxing something, whatever they are discussing, then the whole video is online. And you wonder who leaked the video for how much money the person did it for. Anyway, so these things are becoming a strong business opportunity, and that's why some international organizations are opening some security havens like that, so that people can uh, be assured that they can be in an environment and be themselves. Yeah. But thank you for your contribution. So, class, thank you very much. I'm very happy that people are finding benefit of this. And I was telling Dr. Bano that I know the Saturday class will even do more justice than the first two classes because you are, I think somehow the combination they did, it seems quite a number of the people in this class have got more experience, varied experience in terms of what the roles they play in the organization. So usually the questions that come are a little bit top notch in terms of more practice oriented than explain this and define this. Here you see that it's quite different. The more of the application is what you find with this class. So class, once again, I said I'm proud of you and truly I'm proud of you too about that. And sometimes to tell you the truth, your class is what defines what we learn next week. Oh. When I come to class, the questions you ask me, for example, now you have defined what I'm going to teach next 3 weeks. Even though I have my content, now I have to tailor my content in such a way that I cover expectations of this particular group. So thank you very much and well done. Cecil and team. Okay. Dr. Bano, do you have anything to say?
No, Prof. I've enjoyed the class.
Okay, then thank you very much. And have a nice day. I've shared the I've shared the document already. I'm going to share the what's the name, the video by close of day. so they can have it. Your video is well put together. I like that we're engaging ourselves in this one. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
You too.
Mhm.
You too. Bye.